Hi everyone, it's Sloth here. Today we are going into Kaladesh with the new expansion, and the first deck I wanted to try is Esper Control. And just a short reminder, this deck I think will be played in a few videos, so I will just make a same introduction to those as the deck won't really change. So if you've seen other videos of this gameplay, just you can skip to the games. And if not, let's discuss what's the idea behind it. So one of the biggest cards, and to be honest, a huge surprise to me that the card is so good, is the Baral, Chief of Compliance. It's 2 mana creature, legendary creature, human wizard. It's 1/3, so the stat is quite fine, and it helps to block and to mitigate the damage from all the decks. But the most important thing is instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less. And that's a huge difference. And the deck was built around this a bit. So as you can see, a lot of cards have 1 colorless mana. So Negate, Into the Roil, Helpless Act, Inscription of Ruin, everything benefits from this. Even board clears, and especially the drawing card. Because this is a 4 mana play, with this it starts to be a 3-turn play, and that's huge, that's very big difference. And that's one of the biggest drivers for the deck. Also, whenever you counter something with a spell, so obviously with a spell, you can draw a card and discard a card, and this actually helps a lot as well, because during a lot of matchups you have some dead cards. Depending if you are playing against the control, then dead cards are pretty much the removals, especially the sweepers. And if you are playing against like heavy creature deck, you very often don't need maybe, for example, Teferi or maybe some Inscription of Ruin, depends on the context, but believe me, it comes handy. Often it's just a draw additional card. Especially if you get flooded with lands, which sometimes happen, then you just discard a land and it's just a free card, just for countering something. And if not, you just can, tailor your answers to the board, and this is also one of the decisions. So if you are good, you can, make it to your advantage. So that's a very strong card, and also with Fae of Wishes, it's really helpful. There's a huge difference when you play the same wish that you just wished for on the same turn, with or without this creature. So with this, you get 2 additional mana. You can wish for 3, and let's say you had 7 lands. Then it means you can wish for 5 mana play on the same turn. So you just lose 2 mana for the whole process of wishing. Normally you would have to pay additional 2 mana, combining to 8, I believe. I forgot the example, but if you are going for the 4 mana for the wish and 5 mana for some play, then you normally would need 9 mana. And with this you need 7 mana. That's a huge difference, and it very often comes into play. So I really feel the difference with Baral. And the second big thing is the Baral expertise. So you can see this Baral time deck, but it spells return up to 3 creatures or artifacts to their owner hands. And the most important part, because this is 5 mana, bounce 3 creatures, you may cast a spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand. And that's one of the biggest thing in the deck. It's actually an amazing card. It's mostly, of course, to an answer to the creature decks, but not only. Even against control, you will see it really helps. And the biggest thing is that you can swing the whole tempo of the game in 1 turn. So the idea is that you bounce the biggest creatures from the enemy, and we have some very strong 4-drops. The reason we have them is this card, because we particularly want to do something to its full potential, like with all the mana. So Kefnet is one of the best drops that we can get. So you bounce everything nearly the enemy has, and then you have a creature on the board. So the enemy has a problem. Either he can replay all those creatures, possibly not in one turn even, or he can answer the Kefnet. If he answers the Kefnet, you have a free turn, and it comes back anyway because it's Kefnet. If he doesn't, then you can draw with it, and depending on what you draw, you can have a very strong effect for cheap mana. So that's one of the better plays. You can also make it a Teferi, and just a disclaimer, it's two Teferis. I don't know why in this layout it just shows one, but we have two Teferis, and you can actually see it on this list. So if you go to the site view, you can see we have two Teferis. So that's interesting, but whatever. So we have also Teferi, and this is also a great draw because like drop with barrel expertise, because you can bounce everything, and on the clear board you have a Planewalker, and it activates 2 per turn, so it's very hard to answer. And when the enemy replays everything, the Teferi still stays, and you can board clear, and then it spirals out of control, and it also helps you to, you know, cycle the things. So those are the biggest plays, and Teferi is very nice in this deck, I've noticed. So other than this is mostly typical control. We have one Settler the Wreckage, partially to goblins, but also to be like a surprise factor, and it's still a removal, so it just works a bit better for me this way, and I've noticed most players don't play around it, so that's why it's so effective. If people played around it, it probably would be rough, but in this situation it's often like really amazing, and it exiles all the creatures, so sometimes it comes into factor. We have Raska Contempt to exile big creatures and gain life, and we have some counter spells as usual. Into the Roil helps a lot, especially with Barrel. It's 3 mana, bounce something, draw a card, or 1 mana, bounce something. So it's very flexible, and you don't need to lose the card for it. We have 1 negate just to answer something, and it's also 1 mana with Barrel. So at turn 3 you can play him and still protect him, or just the situation in the game from something big. So for example, the enemy was starting, so he can make a 4 big Planewalker like Karn or something like this, and you can still answer it even after playing the Barrel, and you still get to draw and discard a card. And the last card that I think is very interesting is Arguel Bloodfast. That's not something that generally is played. It's very slow card, but in some matchups this card will win you the game, and I really like this one, and in this deck it feels that it has a place. So generally it's mostly about control matchups, because obviously life doesn't matter then, and 2 mana draw 9 cards is just amazing. Of course you need to pay 2 mana for every card, but most of the turns you just keep up counter spells, and the enemy doesn't play into them because he's also trying to not get counter spelled. So at the end of every turn like this, you draw additional 1 to 3 cards, and then after 3 or 4 turns of such play you just have everything and the enemy doesn't have it. So this one is huge, and even against like aggressive decks you can still flip it, you get additional land, so worst case you get the land. And you can also sacrifice Kefnet or Barar if you need some kind of extra life. Sometimes you really need like 5 extra life to win the game, and this will help you. And sometimes you still can draw additional cards. If the enemy got you to 12, for example, it's possible that you go to 8, for example, and get additional control over the game. And with Absorb, it's not so hard. Like if you draw extra Absorb, it's worth it already. So I think those are the basics. I really like the deck, and I think you will like it too. So I know that I'm rambling a lot of a lot of time, so probably you either aren't watching or you are waiting if anything more is about to be said. Not really. So I think let's go to the games and let's enjoy the new faster control. So this one is tricky. We actually have the blue mana with Fabled Passage, so we can negate, we can into the Royal, though not much more. And we don't know what the enemy deck is. I think I will keep it, but it's super risky. Like, I think without the Into the Royal, I wouldn't take it, because negate can be a dead card depending on the matchup. And usually, like, non-creature spells come into play a bit later, so 1 or 2 drop isn't like the best counter for negate. And their enemy is mulliganing to 6, so that's good for us. And it's not aggressive deck, so it's also good for us. Unfortunately, I will have to take the island from the deck, because next turn I want to be able to cast those. But I would be very happy to just draw island, so it's not great to thin the deck. But it's not such a huge difference, and not playing our 2-drop is huge difference. So let's go for it. Okay. See? Calculated. Exactly what we knew would happen. Of course, that's very lucky draw. And I'm super happy we got it. And we actually get to counter something. The enemy has something for 1 white, or maybe they have Pact of Negation. I think they have Pact of Negation. Okay. I didn't remember cards for 1 that could be played this way, but cycling, yeah, cycling makes sense. Okay, and given this is a control matchup, we don't really care so much about the HP. It would be great to have Teferi on the board, but we might have to wait. But we might not. I actually think we can try. The enemy has only 3 cards. And I think he based he was basing that Narset will get him something. So it's very possible he doesn't have counter spells. I will risk it. In the worst case it gets countered and we still need to get rid of all those counter spells, so it happens. Okay, so the enemy had it. So that's a strong hand. He had ramp, draw, removal, and counter spell, all in 6 cards. The only bad thing would be the fairy, but then we just bounce it. Yeah, so now we need to think. I think now can be time for Kefnet. And I will pay life anyway, because I don't want to get censored. And how many counter spells can you have? Let's see. The enemy didn't play like Teferi or anything like this, or Nissa last turn. He might have some kind of removal, like the second cast out, but we will see. Then we get it third from the top. Okay, so the enemy indeed has this. And I think we take it. It's not best card for the matchup, because it gets countered and removed, but still it's powerful if we can manage to make it stay. The enemy has 1 card only. So at this point I don't think we do it. We could make the enemy top decking, but I don't think it's worth card for card. And at some point he will probably keep two cards. So I think that's the play. It's only 3 mana, so soon we can keep counterspell with it. Though those cards aren't very useful at the moment. So we have answers, but a bit too many of them. And this is a nice card as well. We need target for this, unfortunately. I don't like Inscription super much. It doesn't seem the enemy has amazing things, because he never played it, even when we were tapped. And we cannot keep counterspell if we do it. Let's wait for the third land. I would really like to do it, but even top deck from the enemy can be very problematic. Though I think this one is fine. We can deal with a lot of things. And this one always demands some answer from the enemy. And at some point he cycled one cast out. He used the second one. So at some point the enemy might have problems with dealing with it. He might take some kind of Wrath of God. But yeah, with this one we still draw the card. So we decline the first one, so the reveal. And this one we want. We also make deck a bit bigger, but I'm not sure if it will be any kind of factor here. We have a bit too few lands for my taste.
It is an honor to meet you.
And the enemy will take probably Narset, I think. Narset or Counterspell.
Seek and find.
Okay, so this is a bit riskier play. And we'll see what the enemy wants to find. Okay, and he has the fairy. Okay, this is this is big in this case. The enemy has only one card. I think we can do this one. The question is, what do we want to do with the Into the Royal? I would like to draw the card. Then he plays Tamiya, and if he draws another land, then he can play Teferi the same turn. So then he will have two Planewalkers, but then we can go for the Wish, and then we can go Elder Spell, I think. So maybe that's not worst. Let's go for Barar. And we can go into the royal with Kicker. Because I think this is very value matchup, and right now we got a lot of cards that don't interact very well. So I think every additional card is nice. Especially that with Wish we can deal with a lot of things. And this is even better, because we can deal with it without any kind of problem. And the enemy has exactly two cards. So I think this is amazing for us. He will also probably tap out the Dream Trawler, and what it means, we sneak 1 damage for free. Do we want to do it this way? I think, yeah. Hell, if enemy doesn't make a Dream Trawler tapped, we can even remove it normally. So let's start with this one. We want double white. Or double black. Yeah, so we have colors that we need. And target. And he had Tamio, and right now he, after the bounce, he actually doesn't have it. So Into the Royal is pretty good with Inscription. Like they work together very well. The Inscription can also get Barar or Defay in case we need it. And just remove anything. So the enemy right now needs to think, do we have removal or we just bluff it? But honestly, like, you don't lose anything pretty much by tapping the Trawler. So I think that's just a safe decision. No reason not to. Yeah, so this is good play by the enemy. The problem is the enemy will have one, like literally one top deck to do anything he wants. And I'm very scared that he will draw the best card of his deck that will make everything, you know, kinda even. But we will see. So the enemy is thinking really a lot. I'm not sure why. Like, there's not much to do except this card. Okay, and the enemy had very strong cards. Okay, so right now we can go to attack. Always one extra damage. And now we just rough the board. And the enemy has exactly nothing except this card, so if he uses this one, it's kind of fine. Then I think... yeah, so this will be the end step. The end step play. And now the question, do we want Counterspell or Kefnet? And the answer is Kefnet. The enemy actually drew the Counterspell. Yeah. Though for this reason he cannot get additional cards this turn. So it's not worse, but that's one draw. Okay, and the enemy this time doesn't seem to have much. Or he could have negate, but... or absorb even. But I think that the enemy doesn't play with absorbs, even though he has the mana. Okay, we got a land, which is quite nice. And it's very possible that at this point we make it more slow game. Those are very good against any kind of creature decks, but right now they aren't perfect. They might come handy, especially when Uro comes back, probably next turn, unless he draws the mana that he needs. He drew it, but he played it tapped. Not sure if that's intentional or he will just realize the mistake. Okay, he played another one, so he can do it, but he decides not to. Which is interesting. So, what's the situation? The enemy has a lot of mana. He probably will play Uro next turn. But I just think we need to play it. Like, I cannot wait 1 or even 2-3 turns to get a land.
Let's make this quick.
We really need to start filtering things. So this is fine completely. And we don't need this one. Even though it works on tokens. Oh, and I forgot that we didn't play the land. So this one is great. We have 4 black mana. We have 3 white mana. I think we should get blue. We only have 3 and most of the deck is blue. So let's go for it. So right now it's great, it's better. It's not yet great, but it's much better, because we have filtering, so we can get rid of the cards we don't like, and we have counter spell. So when Uro comes, we don't do anything about it. We have quite a lot of answers to this one. The token isn't perfect for us, and it will be done every turn, but it's not end of the world. It will just make Teferi not really ult. But he will get the job done, and we will filter everything that we don't need. And sometimes we still grow. This is pretty good draw, I would say. So, what do we want to discard? I think it might be this, honestly. It's not worst, but this one is better. We draw a card and we need a bit more advantage. Okay, Absorb is very good as well. So we need to actually rough the board right now. Do we? Yeah, I think we should. So let's try it. It's very possible enemy has another counter spell knowing him. Okay. So it will be for a few turns like this. But it buys us time. And we get a lot of filtering, so the enemy draws a bit more cards, but our are higher quality, let's say. And do we want a land? I would love land, but we also need other things. But with Fey, land is actually very tempting. But what we should discard? Like, for sure not counter spells. Raska is very good, and I think next turn we might want to do it. Oh, I think we need to discard into the Royal, actually. Because this way I could kill the giant at the end step. And I think that's huge. If the enemy doesn't have counter spell, like he might be not using it, but I think most of the players would use counter spell in this situation. So I think it's very possible he doesn't have it, unless he will draw one. Okay, and that's pretty good for us. But his mana is very counterish, let's say. I think we do it. And let's see. Okay, this didn't hold the priority. Yeah. This didn't hold the priority, so I don't think he has anything on instant speed. He also tapped a lot of mana, so he cannot replay the giant, the Uro. At this point we cannot discard any of those. And as you can see, the Teferi is slowly but growing with all this pressure. So, what do we want? We could go for the Fae, which is very strong. But we can also go for the long game and get the canister inside. And I think that's something we want. Especially that we can do it on the end step again. We don't need Wrath. I think we want to play the land. Lands are great. We have Face, so every land just adds to the value that we have. And let's see what the enemy does. So right now we are into the long game. We could go all in and just wish for something big and next turn just play it, but then we won't be having any kind of counter spell shield. And the enemy is a bit fed with the situation, so he just main phase it. Maybe to not hold the priority, so the game goes faster. Okay. But I'm not sure why he doesn't play the giant. I think that's correct choice. And I like lands, but that's not what I want to draw. So let's go maybe for white, why not? And let's discard barrel. Actually I should do it before the Teferi, but you know. And this card as a one-off is pretty amazing.
I do love a good puzzle.
And that's another land. But we have so many good things that I think we prefer to do it like this. And with this we can draw a lot of cards and finally be on top of everything. So we have double counterspell this turn, or counterspell and Vraska. So we are starting to go into very good areas with our control. The enemy has something, but not enough. And as you can see, they cannot even stop the fairy. He's just getting stronger and stronger every turn. And that's all they do right now. But honestly, I'm not sure why the enemy isn't playing the giant. They don't know about any of the cards, so they can only guess if we have something. That doesn't make much sense. Maybe the enemy has some kind of Ugin and he doesn't want to remove his own stuff, but I'm not sure. Okay, so we are in the end step, so let's get to play with the card. I think we can go. Can we go one more? Yeah, I think we can. We like it risky.
Time to improvise.
Though I'm not sure if that's the best call to do it once again, but I will do it. Especially that we have so much stuff going on. And right now the filtering is really helpful for us. So we might the Teferi will probably go to 4-5, and that's fine. So this is the point when we want to wish for something. And I think this something can be either Cruel Reality to close the game, or I even think we just go for Omniscience. So this is 4, 5, 10 mana. 10 mana. So we could do it, but the enemy might counterspell it. And how many cards the enemy has? 4. So let's do it, and let's see what hell will unleash the next turn. Right now, when the enemy sees what we are doing, he will probably try to get rid of all the cards that he has. So we are closing the game slowly, but I think surely. The fairy ult would be amazing to close the game, but we would have, with the castle, he can do it as an instant, so we cannot really grow it very easily. And most of the time it's not worth tapping mana or using the card. Okay, so I think, how many cards? 17, so that's not super a lot. I think in this situation we just draw. And we don't need any more. So it seems the enemy is just waiting if we deck out. And for this turn the castle is tapped. So let's just do this one and see what the enemy had.
How long do you
I have
want?
reached. I question this outcome.
That's... well, that's a lot. Not sure what he had. I think Essence Scatter, Reinforcements, Essence Scatter and Reinforcements. Okay, so that was his package to live through the game. Okay, and that's pretty much it. He has only Uro at this point. So I think we can go with one Fey. It will block and it will make things cheaper next turn. So it seems the enemy is trying to win by not decking out, I guess. But he has Teferi, so he could do it always. So I think playing Uro would be good for him. Yeah, so right now we are just trying to finish him. Our castle didn't come, so probably it's at the bottom. So we will see. At this point we don't really mind losing much HP. But given that the enemy doesn't have anything except this, we can just reduce it for like by 1, because the enemy can tap the castle every single turn. Yeah, so it wasn't easiest to close, so probably it would take some time, but like the control was pretty full in this game after we tried to play it slow. Alright, so we have everything to use the Wrath, and we have some mana acceleration, so I quite like this hand. We don't have much draw, but we have Fey, so we have some value. We will see, as usually. And the enemy is going for the artifact deck, so probably we will want to wish for the 6 mana removal everything. I don't remember the name, something with hour, but it's 6 mana with 3 white. So probably later. And we want to keep the negate right now. Next turn we can use the barrel together with negate, and the enemy just whiffed, so they just lack lands. It seems they hoped they will find it. And we can do it this way, because negate is 1 mana right now. And I think we are fine with this one. So what's very nice about this situation, first, this one returns artifacts, so we could actually just make everything go back, but I think we wait for the monument. So this is 2, 3, 6 mana. Yeah, I think we wait for the monument and then we bounce everything and then we have still negate. So for now, let's manually tap the mana and we can go for the Fey. The enemy is waiting. So yeah, the Hour of Revelation. Though in this situation, we might think we have some options. The second one would be Heliod Intervention. It's quite great in this situation. We can destroy up to 3 artifacts, and I think this is better. This is also very good. But first let's disable what the enemy has. And we can attack, cause why not? As you can see, all the spells are really nicely priced. Oh, actually it's 4 artifacts, because this is also discounted. So the enemy, I think I counter like planewalkers. Yeah, so triggers are fine. The enemy will get a lot of HP. Yeah, I think we just destroy it. I don't want it on the board, and we also get to draw the card. Yeah, and that was this easy. I'm not sure if the enemy didn't know that this discounts something. Not sure. But with this in hand, you pretty much guarantee that you can clear the board on an instant speed. And we also had this one. With this we would draw something and probably discard the Wrath. Okay, so we have a little bit of everything. This one won't be super useful at the start of the game, but we might play it as a 4 mana drop. We will see. And this is a good removal. And we have some protection, so against creatures we have those 2 cards, and against non-creatures we have this one. But it seems to be kind of rogues, probably. And we are going second, so that's not great. So our win condition probably will be this. I'm happy they don't have the Curious Obsession. So this just seems to be a flying creature deck. And the question is, do we want to tap out? I think it's quite possible we get at least 1 draw here. And the enemy will be playing creatures right now, I think. There's an enchantment that buffs all the flying creatures, but I think they use the Empyrean Eagle that buffs everything, so I expect something like this. So for this reason, let's go for this. It might also make a mana accelerant in a situation we need additional land when we are very low at HP, so I think it should be beneficial one way or the other. Yeah, and there's the eagle. And next turn, oh, actually I wanted to keep negate for the sorcery that untaps everything and buffs the flyers, but at this situation I think we might go for inscription. Because this one buffs everything by a ton. The enemy has also 2 cards. So we can go both ways. We can right now discard everything the enemy has. Then they are left with 1 draw and this board. And then we clear it next turn. But we risk dying. So I think we can take it slow. Let's just kill the big thing. 3 or less, so this will be the one. And suddenly the board is super small again. This also might suggest the enemy that we don't have board clear if we used like a spot removal, so it might encourage them to play more creatures into the board. And at this point, it's not super much by the enemy. So he has 2 cards. That's an interesting situation. But I think we actually clear it. Mostly because the enemy has tapped blue mana and I don't want to risk that he has some lofty denial. Not sure if a lot of people play it like this, but it fits the deck. So we need white mana? No, we can have any mana that we want. So we have this, we could need to black, but we have black here, so I think it is blue for Teferi. And let's clear everything. It's good, especially with Bloodfest, because we don't risk running out of value, so the slower the game, the better for us. And I don't want to tap out, we have a lot of answers. So let's just keep it slow. Worst case, we can also try to pay life to make it into land if we need mana acceleration. But we have a lot of life right now. So we can have 1 mana or 2 mana. And I think in this situation it's actually worth to play with Kicker on the Sailor, because they either replay it and then they don't draw the card. Okay, and they decided, I think, to replay it. Because if they drew the card, then they won't be able to replay it during their turn. And we still draw the card, so it's pretty much 2 for 1. And the Teferi is also good here. We could use Discharge, but at this point I'm not sure if we need. We might do it and then step of this turn, depending what we draw. Then we also get additional land. If you want to. We might not want to, actually. So it all depends what the enemy will do. We can phase out everything the enemy plays if we really need to. And he cannot kill the Teferi right now. So he will stay. And this way it heals us by 4 HP. So this is one of the advantages of Planewalkers. And this is a nice card. And at this point I'm sure we will use the Bloodfest. It's additional card that we want. I'm not still sure if we want to flip it yet. I think possibly no. We don't have super much use for the mana. And we might want additional cards. So, first let's draw as always. We might get something.
Think fast.
And we want to discard the land for sure. We can play this. We don't have any creature in the graveyard. And killing this, like, it's not important because the enemy in a response would play the Sailor if we use the Kicker version, and then we still kill 1 creature only, and that's it. We could try to go for Inscription, but let's see what the enemy does. If he attacks with everything, we settle for sure. And if he splits it, we might use Raska to kill 1 of them. We also have Negate just to ensure everything goes how we want. I would really be happy with drawing some cards also. So this is the last card for the enemy. And if we negate, then the enemy cannot play the creature. And if we remove everything from the board, then that's the only thing that the enemy has. And this is actually quite scary, let's say. So let's counter it. It also pressures the enemy to deal with Teferi, so it's not so easy. And that's exactly what we wanted. So I won't be surprised if the enemy scoops out. He has a lot of mana, but that's pretty much it. And we also won't flip it, so I really would like to have additional 2 cards from this. The enemy is looking for the lands. So the only problem will be Spectral Sailor, because they have quite a lot of mana, and this is 1 mana flash. So except for this, I don't see much pressure. Everything with flash is a bit more problematic. Everything that is played as a normal creature isn't a problem for us. We can really filter the cards. And I think the enemy doesn't scoop, he just will try to rope us, so that's good, but that happens a lot. So I think at this point the game is won. I will probably cut the roping, so you guys don't waste time for this, and Kahna showing some class. Okay, so we are back. The enemy didn't do anything, and after the settle the wreckage and pressing attack all, he just scooped with a lot of negative feelings, I assume. So yeah, that was full control of the game right now. And the inscription is very useful in a lot of ways.